we're STRI, right, the Auditory Oral School in New York, and we provide services to children from birth through age 5, but really forever, because we keep our kids, they're part of our family. Like we have the Zuckermans on, we have Kerry, we have Michael's mom on, and we have lots of alumni on. We have Jessica logging on. And we're family. We provide speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, music therapy, social skills, counseling, and we really help the parents and guide them. And we take them from when they first come, and a lot of them are grieving and what's going to be with my child? Are they ever going to be okay? Are they going to have friends? Are they going to be able to swim? Or just a million questions. And then we come, and Penina, who's been through it, and Suzie, you've been through it, and hold their hands and promise them, I promise you it's gonna be okay. It's a journey, but we'll make it through together. And okay, well, a lot of people are logging on now. And as Abigail was talking, she just kept coming back to, hi Abigail, I see you're on now. And Abigail kept saying that it was all her mom, and some students were asking, didn't you want to just stop doing therapy? Didn't you want to take your implants off? And she said, my mom didn't let. I remember specifically, one of our alumni asked you, Abigail, I think something along of, don't you just want to take your implants off? And she's like, well, clearly we don't have the same mom. That was her response. So that's a little about our school, and we really try to help people through the process. And so Suzie, the first thing is, I guess, parents nowadays also have a lot more support, and there's the internet and there's social media, and you could connect with people, but you were in a time where there was more probably stigma, and there was just a lot more questions. How were you such a strong, actually I should start with, give us a little bit, a 1 or 2 minute about yourself, your story, and then we'll get to some questions because we have so many that the parents sent in. So first, let's hear from you. I'm giving the floor to Mrs. Heringer, Suzie Heringer.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having myself and the girls. I remember when the girls were little, and any opportunity I had to meet other parents or children with hearing loss were further along in the process than my girls, I jumped at the chance because it's always very inspirational and hopeful because, like you said, Sarah, it's a journey, but we all get there. And it's just reassuring to know that we will get there. So for our family, Rachel was diagnosed with a profound hearing loss when she was a year old. And I was young. I was a little bit younger than Abigail when I was married and had Rachel. And it was hard to access information. But so we found out she was profoundly deaf when she was a year old. I was pregnant with Abigail. So Abigail was tested at the hospital and confirmed that she also had a hearing loss. So Rachel was in hearing aids at about shortly after her 1 year. Abigail started wearing hearing aids when she was 2 months old. And over the first year of our journey, kind of realized what their hearing loss, how significant it was and what it would mean for the girls. We became aware of cochlear implants when we visited the John Tracy Center in Los Angeles. And I knew for our girls that was going to really be their only option to be oral. And so that was an easy decision once I knew what that looked like for them. So they both had the surgery when they were 2. And then I was a single parent for a while, raising the girls with the support of my parents. And then I remarried when the girls were 5 and 6. And then we have 2 more children, 2 brothers that are 17 and 19, and they are both hearing. But so we are a family of 6. So in a nutshell, that's us.
Yeah, and I've seen some beautiful pictures of your family. So you definitely have a really beautiful family, and so much to be proud of. Rachel, we're going to hear from you tonight, and I'm sure there's a lot to be proud of. We haven't heard from you yet, but okay. So
maybe Rachel can introduce herself and tell us a little bit of her story.
That's a great idea. Rachel, you have the floor. If you want to give it 2 minutes about yourself, or as long as you'd like.
I'll keep it short. I'm Rachel. I'm Abigail's bigger, older, wiser sister. No, I am currently in Beaverton, Oregon. I work in commercial insurance. I live in an apartment with my corgi puppy who is taking a nap just right over by me. No, I'm really excited just to hear, or just to have my mom have the spotlight. You know, she really was our strongest advocate for so long, and where I think, and Abigail could probably agree, a lot of the confidence that we got in being able to advocate for ourselves and the problem solving and the creativity, you know, really started with our mom, and we really were very, very lucky to have basically a front row seat in how she raised us. And so yeah, so that's a little bit about me, but more about my mom.
Okay, awesome. So the first question, I'm going to go way back early. If anything you don't want to answer, just let me know and we'll move on. But, you know, is just so many parents now, you know, it's such a struggle. At first you get the diagnosis and you don't know anything about the oral world, the deaf, you know, the signing world. And it's just like, how did you decide that decision? And like, you were confident in it. We have parents that, you know, like, should I have not done the cochlear implants? How do I know I did the right decision? So how did you come to that so long ago, before there was all this awareness on, as I said, like social media and Instagram? What gave you the support to choose your decision and go through the surgeries and start all the therapies and send them to an auditory oral school? Where did you get all that from?
Well, and I explained to the girls too, you're right, the internet really wasn't a thing. I mean, this was in 1994 when Rachel was diagnosed, and so getting information was tricky. My mom was a big researcher, and she would look into lots of different things. I was more the kind of person that wanted to see something and then I would understand it. So our early interventionist in Eugene, where we lived at the time, she happened to be someone who supported an oral approach, which most of the people in our area did not. They would have preferred the girls to take on a sign language approach. But she always provided resources, connected us, in our case on the West Coast, with the John Tracy Center. And it was when I saw those kids learning to talk and to listen with cochlear implants that had the same kind of hearing loss as my girls did, that it was a really easy decision for me. The girls really have no hearing, even with a hearing aid on. I could take Rachel and Abigail, but it was more Rachel just because of her age, out to the airport. And what she would like to do, we would sit at the end of the runway with her hearing aids on, because she could hear the airplanes take off. But that's all she could hear with her hearing aid. And so I knew that it was going to be very difficult for her ever to be able to learn to talk and be independent if she didn't have a cochlear implant. So for us, it was pretty black and white, because their hearing loss was so profound. So the decision to do the surgery and have the cochlear implants, it almost felt like an easy one to me, because I didn't feel like they had anything to lose.
Yeah, I guess we have a lot of moms that would agree with you that that's why they ended up choosing. They had nothing to lose and all to gain. If you don't do it when they're young, when else can you do it that they'll gain all the speech and the language? But yeah, it's just incredible, because even now it's such a hard decision, and to be able to do that back when you didn't have friends that you knew and there was no connections and there was no internet, that's really, wow, you're amazing. So another thing is, you know, a lot of parents struggle with, they don't want to wear their cochlear implants. My child's throwing off their cochlear implants and they don't want to do speech therapy. Should we stop speech therapy? And also, again, I'm just always going back to, like, you're from before, like, again, the internet was like a viral thing and the social media. And how did you know that, like, no, we're going to stick through it and I'm just going to have to be tough love, but I know it's in the long run, it's going to be for the good. Like, again, where did you get that from, and who's guiding you, and like, you're so strong and so powerful. Like, it's just, where did you get it all from?
Well, you're sweet. And I remember you asked Abigail a question about role models, and there really were no kids ahead of the girls where we lived that had cochlear implants. So it was hard to know what that next step would look like. So it is a huge leap of faith, because after they had their implant, you know, progress is slow. We've all been there. We know it starts out very slowly. And but having both the girls, Rachel was someone who wanted her implants on first thing in the morning and wanted it full power so she could hear as much as she could. Abigail would have preferred not to have it on. She just was happy in her world of silence. And so it was a struggle. And so she would put it on, and we'd start at a very low sensitivity and then bump it up through the morning. But I remember when we were at Tucker Maxon, and it was about a half-hour drive to our apartment. At the time, she had the kind with the separate processor that she wore in a fanny pack with a cord that went up. if I left that in the car within a half hour, by the time we got to the apartment, it was in at least a half a dozen different pieces. The battery was out, the ear mold was pulled off, the cords were, and so you're not wearing it in the car. So finding times when they absolutely had to wear it and then times when they didn't. When they came home from school, they were exhausted, no matter if it was preschool, early grade school, high school, and giving them an opportunity to, I don't think they ever took it off as much as they just checked out. And for them, it was in front of the TV. And so after school, our afternoon routine was often way too much TV, but it was the perfect thing for them after school.
I mean, that makes sense. A whole day of listening and having to keep up, it's a lot. And I know Abigail, we had like 3 alumni texted me afterwards that they felt so good when Abigail said that when she comes home from work, she just likes to take off her cochlear implants. They felt so reassured that it's not just them. Like an adult, a celebrity, like they were like so happy to hear that like someone else understands them and they just want to have a break, you know? So that was very reassuring last time. Okay, so first of all, for some people are asking about your daughter's hearing losses, if you want to just.
So they have a bilateral profound hearing loss, and it's been a long time since we've had an unaided audiogram, but they are truly down at the bottom where the only thing they were hearing was in the lower frequencies at the highest volume. And like I said earlier, even with the hearing aids, they would hear the airplane if we were at the runway. And at the time there was a hearing aid called a transonic where it would take the lower frequencies and bring them into a higher frequency. So their hearing loss allowed them to try that, but that was just a brief time before they had the cochlear implants, but they really don't hear anything without them.
Right. So there's a mom on here, Dana, I hope I said your name right. She's an alumni of our school. Her son is an alumni of our school. She had some really good questions for you. So Dana, the floor is yours.
I'm sorry to do this with you. Do you have access to the questions?
Of course I do. Would you like me to ask them?
Yes, please.
Sure. Let me pull them up. Yeah. Sorry. Here they are. Okay, so the first question that she asked was to Suzie, did other parents ever ask you about your children's story, or did people just accept them as they are? Like when you went around and you were at the zoo or you were at the aquarium, were you getting stopped and asking like, you know, what is that? What's going on? How did you answer them? I guess, how did you make your kids feel, you know, that they're regular, that this is just, they wear glasses, this is their implants? How did you do that when you were meeting other people?
And I think during preschool, what I noticed is a lot of the kids themselves, they might have been curious, but they were never bothered by it. And it was just all very natural. And so that was a very easy one to explain. When they had friends come over, or they went over to friends' homes and, you know, if the battery died or, you know, what is this? It was very easy to explain. If we were out and about, my thought was the more people know, the more they accept. And if it's the fear of the unknown. And so anytime somebody asks questions, we would just explain. We called it their ear, and without it, they can't hear. And with this on, they can hear you. And depending on how much of an interaction was going to happen, you know, I might say that, you know, they'll need to see your face. It helps them to hear you better. Or if they don't hear you the first time, they're not ignoring you, but they just need you to say it again. But a lot of preemptive, if we were going to meet somebody or do something like that. But always welcome the questions. And as the girls got older, then I think they had a model of how to explain it and the comfort to explain it.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I mean, not funny. I clearly see where Abigail and I guess Rachel as well, where they got so strong from. Because Abigail was saying, like, she would just rather tell people right away and get like off the bat, and it just makes her life so much easier. And once you tell everyone, they just love you for who you are and you're not hiding anything. And so I definitely see who they got it from. That's for sure. Okay, and now we have another question. This one actually, Donna was supposed to be here when it was Abigail's turn for the spotlight, but unfortunately she missed out. But she wants to know if she can still ask Abigail a question, if that's okay.
Of course.
Okay, so Abigail, she wants to know, and I guess actually Rachel as well. This could either of you can answer it or both of you. She wanted to know if you felt like you were treated differently by your peers growing up, and did you ever feel different, and how did you cope with that feeling?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I can take a stab at answering it first. Yeah, I think when I was younger, I don't think I really realized that a lot was different with me. Because I just basically all I care about was just going to recess and just trying to do the normal kid things. And then I think it was kind of middle school and high school. I think that's when I kind of started noticing it a little bit more. Just kind of the cliches in high school, the popular group and not being able to follow on with all the conversations. I think I was pretty lucky though, for the most part, that I was never directly bullied, for having hearing loss or a cochlear implant. But I think there were moments where I just felt like, oh, I wish I was more normal. Like, I just wish, I could pick up everything that was happening. And then, it wasn't until I was older that I was like, you know what, like, this is what's different about me. I think people are much more understanding than sometimes I give them credit for. But yeah, no, I think it was the hardest, I would say, in high school for me. I don't know if that's how, Rachel felt. Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely wasn't easy all the time, if I'm being, completely honest.
Yeah, I know we have another mother on here who also really wanted to be here last time. Hi, Angelina. Hi, Davita's family. I know, first of all, they told me that they heard that you were on. Their daughter, Angelina, has cochlear implants, and they watched you with major fan Sorry.
Sorry, we have a few people on that were not last time.
We are big fans.
One second. There's a lot of outside noise. I'm sorry. I don't know where it's coming from. Okay, so Angelina, sorry, I don't know what that was, but so Angelina's a massive fangirl, her and her mom. And Maria, I think it's your computer. It's very scary.
It might be.
I'm sorry.
I might have to join on my phone so that it won't be lagging.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm just gonna mute you for now. Oh, she's okay. So yeah, anyway, so Maria was telling us how, and I know I've heard it from other kids also. I forgot even what we were just saying. I think we were talking about in high school how it's so hard, and I've heard it from you a few times, Maria, like, what do you do when your daughter just asks you, why me? And we've had, and she said she'd had those conversations with Angelina and had to, say that you're just as special as everyone else, right, Angelina? And that it's just like glasses. And yeah, so I just wanted to give them a shout out because I know Angelina really, really, really wanted to be here tonight and say hi to Abigail and to Rachel and to Suzie and meet these famous Heringers because she's just so inspired by you guys.
Maybe Rachel can tell us her feeling about what the last question, because that was
that was what I meant to do. Thank you for bringing me back to. So Rachel, I guess the same question. How did you feel? Did you feel different? And how did you cope with that feeling if you had it? So to help support our alumni who sometimes have those feelings.
Definitely. I think, I definitely felt a little bit different, but I think a big part of it was the support from my mom that I really didn't. I definitely felt some of the struggles. I definitely and I think a lot of the time in high school and middle school, it was your classic, just teenage girl drama. It wasn't necessarily my hearing loss, but just having that support from my mom, the patience she had of, raising a teenage daughter, but also listening and being supportive, really helped me just, realize this is part of life. One of what I live by, I think personally for me, is that I think of my cochlear implant, it was something that was designed to help me. It was never designed to hold me back. And so I always have that mentality when I go into a situation, and that's what really pushes me to think creatively, to really adapt, problem solve. Every situation with my cochlear implant, it's not meant to hold me back. I am supposed to be there, and it might look a little bit different for me, but there's always going to be a solution that's going to work for me. And I think that positive outlook, I really, it starts with my mom and what she did for us, and really taking those extra steps to be really creative, but also just to be really patient and loving and supportive, and so definitely felt normal, but definitely a little bit different. But with all the support, it really didn't make that much of a difference for me.
Yeah, and your mom was definitely a good support. That's definitely what we've heard, and we'll, I guess, be continuing to hear. So another question that we got from a lot of parents was, how did you, when you were in Tucker Maxon, but then you went, I guess, to a different school, did you go into the classrooms and talk about it? Did you just send them on their own in the beginning? What was that like every time you were in a new situation? What did you do as a mom? We have a lot of kids who are graduating this year, and there's a lot of nerves and a lot of anxiety about leaving our center-based program and going into the mainstream. I guess they call it the real world.
Yeah.
And like, what was that transition as a mom? Like, how did you know what to do?
I think every time there's a new school, it's challenging and stressful, regardless if your child has a hearing loss or not. For us, but we were at Tucker Maxon, and then when I remarried, we moved to Ohio for 2 years for my husband's residency. And so by happenstance, and we couldn't have planned it better, they ended up at an auditory verbal school just outside of Cleveland. And so Rachel was mainstreamed in first grade at that point, but they had a hearing impaired program there for support. Abigail was mainstreamed in kindergarten in the morning and then went to their hearing impaired program in the afternoon. So we didn't do a cold turkey mainstream jump into kindergartens. They were in that hearing impaired program. When we moved back to Oregon, Rachel was in 3rd grade and Abigail was in 2nd grade. So it's when we went from having a hearing impaired program of some sort or another to going, when we moved to Oregon, where it really wasn't anything, was the first time I felt like I had to really advocate for the girls, because before it was the program leading me and showing me what the girls needed and, doing a lot of the advocating for them, teaching the girls as well. When we came to Oregon, just because of the lack of resources and knowledge about kids with cochlear implants, there was a lot of education. And one of the things that I did then that we continued is each school year, they have an IEP. They both kept their IEPs all the way through high school. But to me, it was more important the relationship with the teacher. And so I always started off with an email to their teacher, introducing myself, introducing the girls, things that I found that were really helpful. And then conversations, if I had an opportunity to be on the phone or in person, depending on how the beginning of the school year looked. But and then good communication with the teacher all along, because they were a bit left on their own once we came back to Oregon. They had a regional person that would come out and support them, but strong communication with the teacher. And actually, Abigail started at our neighborhood school when she was in 2nd grade, and she could have stayed there, but of all of our educational experience, there were 2 teachers that they weren't bad teachers, but they just weren't very, the communication wasn't good, and they just wouldn't go that extra little bit. And so I actually moved Abigail to a school that was equal distance, but happened to have a total communication approach, which I was very hesitant to do because she didn't know sign language, and I felt like it was going to be a step backwards. But they had a really good speech program as well. And so she continued to get regular speech, and then also have a hearing impaired teacher in the classroom regularly. And for her, it was a time when she was in 2nd and 3rd grade. So reading, but not reading really well as far as for comprehension and learning. And like her 2nd grade teacher, before I moved her, she said, no, she's fine. She's not a behavior problem. She sits, she's got this big pile of books on her desk. And I'm like, she's not reading those, right? She just was an easy student to be forgotten because she wasn't a behavior problem. She could follow what other kids were doing, and she never missed a beat. But I knew she didn't want to go to school, and that wasn't Abigail. I mean, she was somebody who liked to be in school. So for her, I moved them, and that was weird because for 2 years, she was at a different school than Rachel. And then it just got to the point where she was more ready to come back. Had we had a different teacher in second grade, I don't know that I would have needed to move her, but I'm glad that we did. So.
Yeah, you know what? I love what you just said, and especially knowing, like, as a mother, really being involved in the whole process, so that way you knew, like, you knew what was really going on, and you might have even known a little bit more than the teacher what was going on. And as a mom, you have to always be on top of that, so that way you can ensure that your kid's getting the proper services that they need, so that they can continue making progress, because you don't want to waste anyone's time. And it's also not fair to, let's say, like Abigail, to be sitting in school and she'll get by, but who wants their child forgotten? You want them to actually be making progress. So that was very intuitive of you as a mom, and that's very, very, very impressive. So I just want to, there's a lot of new people, and there's also a lot of people, I think, who dialed in over the phone, because I see a lot more numbers than video screen. So, and there are people sending me messages, but if anyone else has any questions, feel free to also put them into my inbox. Okay, so I guess, ma'am, if we can transfer, the next question is, I guess, college, and it looks like Abigail had to sign off due to internet connection problems. So Rachel, I guess this question is for you. There's a mom on here whose daughter is graduating 12th grade this year. We're very excited for her, Carrie. Her daughter Amanda is graduating, and she's going to college. And I guess this was covered a little bit in the first, when Abigail was on last time, but she wants to know what that transition was like, going to college with Cochlear implanted dorming and...
Yeah, I think if I remember right with Abigail, I mean, it's kind of a reset button. You kind of have to start over. It's new people, it's new teachers. It can be nerve-wracking. I personally chose a smaller college, and so my biggest class size, I believe, was about 15 students. And so a lot of the advocating that I would have needed to do, I didn't really need to do. It was already just a smaller class. The way the classes were set up, we really would sit in a circle. But the one thing I did is, like my mom said, the preemptive. I did send an email to all of my professors, just letting them know my situation, and really explaining to them at the very beginning rather than after the fact, because I think people are more understanding when you come more up front. I had a couple of times, I think, in high school where, you know, I kind of waited a little bit, and then I would tell my teacher, and then my teacher, you know, thought, oh, well, are you sure? You know, are you trying to basically cheat the system? And so I think it's really important to find that balance of what you're comfortable with, but really being upfront and clear of what you need. One thing I did do in college my freshman year is I did have a note taker. And that was huge. I think Abigail also utilized that resource, but more so in college than high school, a lot more lecture-based classes. Those were harder to follow. Well, you know, your head's down while your professor's talking. And the note-taking service was something I can't remember what department I got it through, but it was fairly easy. You know, you just go in with your request. As far as my biggest piece of advice is, I think, just really figuring out what you're comfortable with and really communicating with your professors up front of what you need at the very beginning. Like my mom said, from middle school, actually elementary school to high school, you know, we can count the number of teachers on our hands that, you know, we struggled a little bit with. So, I mean, teachers are there, they want to support you, they want to teach you, they want to help you. So definitely, yeah, I would just let them know up front. And college is fun. I miss college.
I actually have a question for you myself, that as you're speaking, you said that you had a note taker freshman year. What about the rest of college? You were able to manage listening and note, wow.
It was more that my class, or I should say freshman year, a lot of classes I was taking were it was kind of the intro classes to all the different subject areas. And then by my sophomore year, I knew what I wanted to study, so I started taking more specialized classes. At that point, it turned more into discussion-based classes, more small groups where we would get together, discuss something like presented to the class. So I really didn't run into a situation again where there was that lecture format. It turned more into
just once you get into your subject area, and it's different for every school, but at least for me, my sophomore year, that's where it went. And so I felt comfortable not needing it. But the nice thing is that it was an option and it was there if I did.
Really nice. And I think that's probably really helpful for a lot of people to hear. Okay, so the next question.
I just wanted to let you know that Abigail is back on. So
okay. Welcome back.
So Abigail, if you want to just share, we have some people here that weren't on last time. If you can just give them a really quick hello and summary about your story, and then you can answer the same questions Sarah was asking before.
Yeah, sorry about my internet. I don't know if it's the weather here or I've just been having a bunch of issues.
The weather is horrible.
For 5 minutes or so. But yeah, my name's Abigail. That was my sister Rachel, and my mom's on the call as well. Yeah, and then for those that weren't on the call a few weeks ago, I just was on the most recent season of The Bachelor, and I just talked a lot about my story about hearing loss and cochlear implants. So just wanted to swing by and answer any questions that you guys might have. Yeah, because I think it's really important just to kind of have these conversations, and so I'm glad that we're doing that tonight.
Okay, so thank you, Abigail. So now we heard from Suzie a little bit synopsis, we heard from Rachel, we heard from Abigail, and we have a lot more questions. We have like 20 minutes left, so we're gonna have to do this quick. But one mom, I don't see you on here, Helen. I guess you're on the phone or your video is closed. But we have a mom whose daughter graduated our program, and she wants to know, when they left to this kind of auditory oral program, how did you still, was their speech perfect, or did you still have to work? First of all, Abigail and Rachel, your speech is perfect. That's number one. You would never know that you had a hearing loss. It's really, wow, and amazing. Yeah, so she wanted to know how you worked on their articulation after they graduated. Did you have any special techniques that you were using? How did you expand their language once they were mainstream and bridge the gap between your daughters and children who didn't have a hearing loss? Did you have anything special, any tricks or tips that we could learn from?
When we moved, the girls were in 2nd and 3rd grade, and Rachel was more at a point where I don't know that she did any speech therapy after we moved, whereas Abigail just didn't have that extra year, the benefit of a true program. And so she did need speech therapy, and that was one of the reasons that I was wanting to move her to the other school, because they had a speech therapist that was familiar with kids with hearing loss as opposed to one that is a speech therapist that didn't. And so that was helpful. We tried some things on our own. I don't know how helpful they were, and Abigail, I don't even know that she enjoyed them. But one of the things they kind of like to do was to sing. We are not we're just not musically talented at all in this family.
Sorry, Abigail.
So it was a college student, and she was a voice coach. And so American Idol was a thing, and
oh God, this is so bad.
We had her come to the house, weekly, and it was just kind of trying to train Abigail to use her voice. And we joke that when she sings, it kind of sounds like kind of a helicopter. It's not as smooth. And so anyway, we would try these things. I don't think any of them, we're just not singers, but so we did that. And then just reading, lots of reading, and trying to expand vocabulary. They always have the closed captioning on the TV, so there's that, and just exposing them to different opportunities. They're 2 brothers, that becomes a busier family. And in some ways, the things that the boys were doing, even though so much younger than the girls, it just created more opportunities for language, and it just kind of never stops. And even now, sometimes the girls will use the wrong word for something or say it incorrectly, and their brothers are right there to help.
That's what family is for, right? The good and the bad. Well, I guess they're trying to be good, but doesn't always feel like that. Okay, so the next question was from Maria. Maria, if your service is working better, go for it. Ask your question.
Hi, Abigail. Angelina, say hi. This is my daughter, Angelina, and we're big fans of yours. So I wanted to ask you guys, what kind of services and what kinds of like extra help did you receive in middle school and high school? What did you ask for during like the IEP meetings, and what was helpful for you that you found that you needed as you got older?
Yeah, I think in middle school and high school, I wasn't relying as much on kind of FM system because I know we tried doing that in elementary school and it was helpful. But then I think it was just kind of a middle school and high school thing where I was just like, oh, I don't want attention drawn to me, so I just don't want to use the FM system. So I started using kind of more subtle tactics, whether that just be asking the teacher if I could just sit closer to the front. That was kind of the biggest thing. Just asking for if there was like a lecture or something, for there to be like written notes or someone could take notes for me. And even in college, we would have note takers and that was something I would use all the way through college. In terms of services, I'm sure my mom probably would know or remember a little bit more. I mean, we did a little bit of speech therapy through middle school, but unless I'm forgetting something that you guys remember, I think it was more just kind of sitting in the front, just kind of advocating, on the first day and just saying, this is my situation. Just want to give you a heads up. Just try to communicate that to them. Mom, I don't know if you know.
You're right about the speech therapy. And then we had a teacher for the deaf from the regional program that was contracted to go out to the high school. And I think Diane Shermer would check in with you maybe once a month, but it wasn't a regular occurrence. And like I said, they had their IEPs and we would have those meetings. But to me, what was most helpful was talking directly to the teacher. And there were little things. And what I have found is that a reasonable teacher, and especially the good teachers, they're really willing to accommodate you. And there are things like, letting them sit near the front, or if you just little check-ins, and it can be as simple as looking at the student. And if there's a comfort in a relationship, the girls would quickly let the teacher know that I don't know what just happened. And that teacher would be willing to repeat or help them. They always seem to have a friend or two that was willing to help them. And the nice thing for the girls, they both liked school. And so a lot of the worries that I might have had, I didn't, because they wanted to be there, they wanted to learn. And some kids just have a harder time learning in a classroom setting. The girls really, that was their strong suit. They liked to be in class and learning that way. And so I don't think they had too many accommodations during high school.
Thanks. Okay, so our next question is a little heavy. A mom messaged me. Again, Helen, if you're on, I don't see her on here. Okay, so I'll ask it. So she wants to know, at what age do you finally feel like they made it? She's listening on the phone. Is that you, Helen? Did you say something? No? Okay, at what? Oh, there she is. You got her on, her video on. I just want to let you know there's so many people on whose video screens are not on today. So there's really a lot more people on here. But hi, Helen, you can ask your question.
Okay, so what you said in the beginning, it really struck a chord that, you said it's a long journey, but you get there eventually. I'm still like in the middle where it feels like I'm never gonna get there. So I just wanted to feel like, obviously everybody's journey is going to be different, and trajectory also, even there's going to be bumps in the road and each one's going to look different. But like, when did it look like for you, like Suzie as a mom, that like, okay, we're on the other side, we made it, I could see the finish line, like I could see that we're getting somewhere? And eventually you see your daughters now and you realize that it was for something, all of this craziness, but I'm not there yet. So I just kind of want to have like something to look forward to.
And I don't know how old your child is, so I don't know if this will be reassuring or not.
She's 10.
10. So for me, it was when they graduated from college, because I mean, I didn't worry.
I can tell you, you just made her feel so much better.
I was worried that that might seem like forever. But every year is different. It gets easier, but then there's challenges. But there's something about when they graduated from college, they have their job, they're living independently, they still come home and raid the refrigerator or, help them out in a pinch. But there's that level of independence where I don't need to worry about them. They lived together for a while. And so if there was a technical issue, one of them didn't have a battery, they dealt with that with each other. I didn't have to worry about that. And they do, because even through high school, I think I scheduled all of their audiological appointments, and I was the one pushing the IEP, taking something into college so that they would have those supports. And by the time they were done, there is a freedom that they are going to make it and that they are making it, and that it is something that they have to worry about and think about every single day, but it doesn't define their day. And I think Abigail shared last time just with her work. I mean, she has figured out ways to go into a new job that make it easier for her. And they get to the point where they're figuring those things out. And I don't need to be the person, I don't call her new boss and let him know or her know what would be easier for Abigail. They do all of that. But it's more than just their hearing loss. I think when the kids, if any of you have older kids, once they do graduate from college, it's an amazing experience. As a parent.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Is that Talia? No, that's Talia?
No, it's
I was
not
gonna
Talia.
say, that's not Talia. Okay, that was a really good question, and that actually leads into the next parent's question. We have so many questions. Where was the last one? Okay, so the next thing a parent asked was about, so you had Abigail, you had Rachel, not Abigail, sorry. And then you had 2 boys. And we have a bunch of moms who are really struggling with that they had a child with hearing loss, and then they had another child who doesn't have hearing loss. And their older children are asking, why am I different? How did you, why is my brother have typical hearing? And, what was your, how did you support your children, Abigail and Rachel, through that? Did they go through that stage?
Well, and I think our situation is a little bit different because then I remarried and then had the 2 boys. But I do remember I was pregnant with Abigail when we found out about Rachel. And instead of the sadness of finding out Abigail couldn't hear, there was oh, they'll understand each other better than anybody else. And so what a gift that is for them. And then with the boys there's such an age difference between the boys are 17 and 19 now, so they're younger than the girls. So I don't know that we had a lot of those conversations as much.
Okay, that was just, and it's also interesting you say, because I was just talking to a mom, and she has a child with hearing loss, and she just had her second kid, and her second kid, thank God, doesn't have a hearing loss, but she was feeling so guilty that her second one didn't. She was kind of hoping that her first one would have a buddy to go through everything together with, which I guess, actually, I'm curious what that was like. I think Abigail, maybe you spoke about it a little bit. What was it like having a buddy like your sister to go through the whole experience and to go through life with, who understands you for real?
Yeah, it definitely makes all the difference.
Do you still call each other if you have to vent about something with your hearing loss or stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I think it's just nice having someone going to the appointments together. It was nice for me having an older sister just because she would talk to the teachers before me. And so I was just kind of come in, they kind of knew what to do at that point. But that's not to say, our younger brothers don't understand about our situation. I think they do a really good job at advocating for us too, whether that's if we're out to dinner or if we're out with maybe our extended family and we don't hear something, they're always the first to repeat it for us. And so I think even though they might not fully understand, Rachel would understand me, that's not to take away, them not advocating for us or trying to understand or, be good brothers and whatnot. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, that definitely, it definitely does. Okay, so back to mom. Incredible mom, superhero mom, superstar mom, a super everything mom who got her children where they are today. So the next question was that, you know, we're a school, we have every year a few hundred parents of children with hearing loss who are going through the journey and the process. And we have many moms who are single who really, they struggle. It's a lot. It's a big job. And they want to know how you work through those tough moments on your own. And did you have a lot of tough moments? And what's your, like, how can you offer any support about the process?
I think the two toughest things, part of it was the age that the girls were at, but being a single, doing it on my own was one, just having the energy to be talking all the time and give them those language opportunities. And because I would call it kind of narrating life. So anything we did, I was talking the whole time. If they weren't, before they were really talking much on their own, I was constantly saying things over and over, and I would go to bed completely exhausted and worn out because I'm not that social of a person, and it was a whole lot of talking.
If you ever hear something funny, it just connects. Our boss, Penina Bravman, who has a daughter with hearing loss, her famous story that she tells everybody is she's also not like a loud person and doesn't like to do public speaking, but then got herself into this position and does it all the time. But her daughter, she had to get used to talking all the time and narrating her daughter's life. And she said she knew she made it when she was driving past the construction site, and she was like, look, there's a construction truck and he's doing work, and she turned around and there was no one in the car. She was alone. But yeah, so that's
a lot, and it's a lot if you're doing it by yourself. And I was fortunate enough when I was single that we lived with my parents for a big portion of that time, and so we had 3 adults in the home, and so that took a lot of the burden off of me. The other thing that falls if you're single parenting is making those important decisions, kind of where to go to school and what do they need on their IEP. There's a burden there, and there's a lot of weight on your shoulders that you're making the best decision. And if you're doing it on your own, it's just a lot. And so that's a hard thing about being on your own.
Right. Well, I don't know how you did it, but you did an incredible job. Elise, I know you had a question. She's one of our speech therapists, and she had a question for you, Mom.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's really just amazing to hear all 3 of you. And I just wanted to ask Mom and Rachel the same question I asked Abigail last time, which is, do you have any advice for us as speech therapists? Rachel, so I wanted to hear what you had to say.
I think one thing that I do remember that was really helpful is they would always remind me of the bigger picture. Whether that day came in my session, it didn't go well, or, I kept mispronouncing something, or a hearing test didn't go well. That's just one day. Just reminding me of the bigger picture that, this is, like my mom said, it's a journey, but we'll get there. That is one thing I do remember very vividly from my speech therapy, or audiologist, etc. Just really acknowledging that, this could just be one bad day. Let's try again. That positive outlook and that energy just really kept me going.
Yeah, and I would say what I appreciated about, and I think all of our speech therapists were this way, that that they stayed positive and used me as a part of their team and taught me things that I could do with the girls as a and kind of as a peer. And so I felt empowered and confident that what they were doing there, I would be able to take home and continue to do, that the information was very accessible and gave me ideas that I could use realistically without, because, they would put a lot of time into their half-hour therapy session when they had everything right there. And that's hard to recreate on a daily basis, but they taught me how to do things just as going about in the car ride home, or making dinner, or getting ready for bed, and just finding those opportunities, but giving me really tangible pieces. And then also knowing that when they were younger and I was included in those sessions more, that there's some days where it's just not going to be a day where we're going to do much speech progressing. If the girls are just on an off day, I was having an off day, and that there was still value in the session, even if we didn't make progress in the agenda that was there and set up for.
I'm just saying, I wish you lived in Brooklyn, because we need to hire you and you have to come work for us. You're literally like everything, also it's so nice because we're always telling parents, and we try to empower them, and we try to, be their peer and give them the tools so that we know, again, we only see the kids for a little bit of the day, but the parents have them always. And it's just nice to hear that as a mom, you enjoyed it, and you used it, and you took those tools and you found it so helpful. It's like reassuring as like staff to know that you use those tools and you appreciated them. Maria has a question for you, and we'll log off in a few minutes. I feel bad, it's almost 9 o'clock, but these parents have so many questions. Go, Maria.
Well, I wanted to know, between Rachel and Abigail, did you ever compare the progress, different words that were said and how one said it versus the other? Only because my oldest, Angelina, is the one that is deaf, and my other two are back to back behind her, just a year apart, and they are not deaf. And I would always like see the comparison between the three of them being so close in age. I wanted to know, like, if you noticed any differences, even though both girls had the same hearing loss, the differences between their speech and things like that growing up.
Definitely. They both have a hearing loss that on paper looks very similar, but how that has impacted them or how they learn their speech and all the rest, it was different. Rachel was always very social and wanting to be talking to different people, whereas Abigail was more content just to do her own. And in some ways, her speech progressed a little bit slower than Rachel's. And we didn't have anyone ahead of Rachel in our community, so I didn't know like kind of what bar that she was trying to keep up with progressing, and what rate she should be learning things and knowing different things. Whereas Abigail, I had the marker of Rachel, and sometimes I felt like she was maybe a little bit slower to get there, but when I realized it's her personality and it's her learning style, and they both get there, and there's some things that Abigail was able to do that Rachel wasn't able to do, and things that were easier for Abigail to pick up than Rachel to pick up, and it's hard not to compare them. And even with the boys, because their language comes so quick and so fast and so easy, and I don't have to do anything, it just happens, and you realize how much work goes into teaching a deaf child to talk when you have a hearing child that just picks it up. Because I would joke, the girls I don't think knew any inappropriate language well into high school before they started picking it up. And when they did learn a swear word, part of me was, that's awful. But then like they picked that up. Nobody taught that to them. That was something that they just learned on their own. Whereas with hearing kids and the boys, they just picked that up so quickly.
Rachel, we're so proud of you. Abigail, you too. Look at you, good girls. It's also actually so interesting how you were saying that Rachel was the more reserved one, and she's the one who went on national television. So good job, Abigail. That's very impressive.
I know.
Not social.
That was the thing, because Abigail never really had talked about her hearing loss to anybody. Rachel would always tell people, and very quick to advocate for herself and let them know that she was deaf and what she needed. Abigail would rarely tell people, and kind of she felt like it would be an excuse, and she didn't want them to have to make accommodations for her. And so when she told us that she had signed up for The Bachelor and she told them that she was deaf, I was floored. For more reasons than one.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question that I can't believe no one asked. Like, I guess you said your reaction, but like, what was your reaction knowing that your daughter who's deaf signed up to go on national TV? I'm like, air everything.
Well, and the part that surprised me was that she put her hearing loss out there as part of it. But back to the other questions, when do you feel like you've kind of made it and you can just relax? that was part of it. I mean, she's 25 when she applied, and she's doing this. She's independent, and we just get to observe and enjoy her journey. So.
Oh, and one second, I have to ask you a question, Abigail, before we go. Are you going on Bachelor in Paradise?
Good question, Sarah.
I mean,
are you allowed to say?
We'll see. We're
all rooting for you, and we want to see you there. So, Rachel, come on, get on board. Not for you.
We'll see.
Okay, well, I see Maria and her family. They're cheering you on. They're like, yes, go. That's where Angelina's going to be in a few years, right?
We'll be watching.
Well, I do appreciate the support if I do end up doing that.
Okay, and I think we had one last question, and then we'll call it a night. Kind of two questions. It's two questions, but I'm going to turn it into one because it's 9 o'clock. So, how did you guys choose your careers? Did hearing loss come into play when you were deciding on your careers? And what are your accommodations, if any, at your jobs? So I guess from each of you, because you're both, I think, in different fields, that would be an interesting way to end the night. Especially, we have a lot of alumni moms on here who have children graduating high school and going into college. Those are some really fantastic questions.
Yeah, so I mean, my hearing loss didn't play a factor into what I wanted to do career-wise. I had just always enjoyed math and numbers, and I hated English, science. So naturally, I just fell into kind of a finance major. It had nothing to do with my hearing loss, or I felt like, oh, it'd be easier for me to sit at a computer all day versus, something else. And actually, the job that I have now, it's very Zoom heavy. We're on meetings a lot during the day. And for the most part, I don't need a lot of accommodations, just because the nice thing about Zoom meetings is there's usually only one person talking. So I don't have to deal with, group chatter or background noise. I think the only accommodation I've had to ask for recently was not to be a note taker during my client meetings. I think that was something that got assigned to me, and I tried doing one meeting, and it was just hard for me to try to listen and then write notes on a lag while doing that. And they were more than willing to not give me that assignment. But other than that, for the most part, I haven't had to ask for too many accommodations. I don't know if Rachel would say the same. Yeah, I'll just let her.
Yeah, most of my job, thankfully, especially with COVID, has really transitioned to email. And so a lot of my day-to-day tasks are given to me by email. I communicate with clients through email, so that has just worked out in my favor. Backtracking to how I got into insurance, I always knew I wanted to be in customer service, helping people, doing problem solving, so that kind of steered me towards insurance. And like Abigail, I haven't really asked for any accommodations. I think a couple of times if a phone call comes in, I've already had a conversation with my supervisor that if I'm having a hard time obtaining the information, or one thing that'll get me is if there's any accents, especially over the phone, that I have their full permission to essentially say, you know what, let me actually just transfer you over to my supervisor, and they will take the information for you. So that all started from having that initial conversation with my supervisor, but I can probably tell you, handful of times that's happened, because thankfully everything is email driven, which I appreciate. It's just a lot easier. But yeah. Find a job that does email. Makes your life easier.
You're both in two different careers, and your hearing loss didn't have to play into it, and you did what you were passionate about, and you're successful and you're happy at your jobs, and that makes parents just also take another breath of relief. Like, the future is gonna be okay. And I guess, Suzie, to end the night, if you could give for our new moms on here who have babies, we have a bunch of those as well. We have all different age students, alumni, parents on here. What would be your words of encouragement or support to someone who just found out that their child is diagnosed, their child is deaf? what would you tell them? What's your like message to all our new moms?
I think in a one sentence nutshell, one of the commitments I made to myself at the very beginning was that their hearing loss would never be a reason that they wouldn't have an opportunity to try to do something. There are some things that are just really challenging. Rachel tried out for an honors choir in elementary school, didn't make that. That was very disappointing. But I always wanted them to have the opportunity to try everything. And confidence seems to be something that the girls have, and I'm not sure where that comes from, but one of the things
I can tell you where it comes from. It's from you.
One of the things that I think we did that worked out in our favor was always having an activity or a passion that they really enjoyed. And if you're good at it, you enjoy it even more. And for them, Rachel played tennis and Abigail was a golfer. They had an activity where they could do really well at and have that confidence that carried over to other places. And, you know, they tried different sports and activities, but finding things that they enjoy where their hearing loss is not the focus.
I love that. It's so true. And you see it, and you see it makes a difference. We have a girl who opened up a bakery, and she's like in 8th grade, and her mom said she wasn't, you know, school wasn't her strong point. It wasn't going amazing. And she's like, I just need her to know that she's amazing at something. And she started baking, and everyone loved her stuff, and she started selling it. And she just feels like $1 million now. So that's really so important. And you guys are so important. You're like a part of Strive Right now. You're officially Strive Right family.
Love that.
It's amazing. You've been such an inspiration to every single one of us. And I saw that you have hundreds of views already. We saved your recording from last time, and it's on YouTube. And we've had such incredible feedback from everybody. And like I said in the beginning, for everyone who's new on here, we hung up last time and they were like, we need to meet Suzie. That mom is incredible. So thank you. And I guess if anyone has any last words or anything they want to quick shout out or anything, let us know, because this was truly, we will never forget that you guys took your time. You don't know us, but you got to know us, and now we feel like we know you. So thank you so much for sharing your heart, sharing your journeys, tough times, good times, and everything with us. We so appreciate it. And I guess it's not welcome anymore, it's our second time, but yeah, for Suzie and Rachel, welcome to Strive Right. Thank you so much for everything that you did with us and for us. We really appreciate it.
And Suzie and Rachel, thank you. And if you come to visit Abigail in New York, all 3 of you are invited to come visit us in person. We'd love to give you a grand tour.
Oh, I'm so happy. We have a mom on here who just said thank you so much. She's a mom of new twins who have cochlear implants, adorable, identical twin baby girls. And she, if you're okay with her asking you questions or emailing, and I'll forward them to you.
Oh, absolutely.
They just started their journey. I guess she was listening also on the phone, and they're so beautiful. And it's a hard journey, so I will.
And if I could just add, our story is incredible, but everybody has an incredible story. And we're at a point where we can look back and be thankful and appreciative of how things turned out. But I think the more people you talk to, what were you going to say? You will find that everybody's journey, we all get there. And I think hopefully that's encouraging to people with very, very young children, that you will get there without a doubt.
That's so special. And hearing it from someone who went through it says the most. Like, you know, we have Panina here and you, but like most of our parents don't have children who graduated college yet and who really finished that process and have adults who are successful and famous. So it's really so special. Thank you. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and we hope to see you soon. We're having our reunion on June 6th, so